You ready? Our opening statement tonight, let's get it up there. I am ready for a miracle. Together? Let's say it together. I am ready for a miracle. One more time. I am ready for a miracle. So let's take that into our time of prayer as we open our minds, our hearts, our souls to all the good that God has for us. I want you to feel the power of your soul tonight. That your soul has the power to transform any situation. That everything in life we have been given dominion and mastery of. Everything. That you have the power to look at any situation and to call it higher. That you are not here to be victimized by life. You are here to master it. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen. Okay, this is our time in our ministry. We will move into our meditation. So if you haven't already turned off your cell phone, this would be a good idea. And join us as we really focus on the presence and power of God. I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to feel the presence and power of God that's within you and all around you. Take another big breath. And as you do, just let go. Tonight, what if you let go of all the fear, all the concern, and you just completely trusted life, God, the moment. See, one of the things that is so amazing about life is if we stay in the moment we're having, we always have enough. It's only when we move into the future, we think about the past, that we scare ourselves that there isn't going to be enough. But right here, right now, if you stay right here, right now, in this moment, you have everything that you need. And as we move from moment to moment to moment, we have everything that we need. That we no longer need to scare ourselves. We no longer need to live in fear. We no longer need to panic or worry about tomorrow or what will happen then. Because if you have everything that you need now, in every now, you will have everything that you need. I am God's beloved. Will you silently say that with me? I am God's beloved. And everything I need is always provided. Together? And everything I need is always provided. Everything I need. Everything I need is always provided. That there's no limit, there's no lack, there's no limitation, there's no area in our lives where any of God's gifts are withheld from us. I am God's beloved, and everything I need is always provided. I am God's beloved, and everything I need is always provided. Today we take dominion and mastery over our lives. We allow ourselves to actually create our heart's desire by accepting everything in our life exactly the way it is in this moment, and know that we have the power to call it higher. That everything can be called higher. That life will take whatever form we desire. Tonight we let go of any sense of being victimized by circumstance. And we call forth life at the highest level. And so it is. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. Okay, how you doing tonight? So, how many of you like magic? See, I hate it. Anybody else hate magic? I hate magic. Because the problem with magic for me is I really want to figure it out. And when I can't figure it out, it drives me nuts, right? So if it's bad magic, I love it. Because bad magic is so much fun for me. Because I'm like, oh, I know how they did that. I saw the little guy in the back, or yeah, they didn't really saw her in half. Legs were twerked or whatever, you know. Bad magic is just so great for me, right? Because then mentally, I think I've got it figured out, right? And there's a part, because we began this series on miracles, where when it gets to the miracle of transformation, it looks like magic. Because you take a situation the way it is, and you literally transform it before your eyes. It looks like magic. Because as a spiritual being, we have the ability, we've been given dominion and mastery over life. We have the ability to take energy in one form and move it to energy in another form. And the key is that we actually are invited, expected to be able to do that, right? And yet for some of us, when something shows up in a form that we don't really like, we get so bent out of shape that it just freaks us out. We feel victimized, we feel out of control, we feel like we're lost. And yet, what I want you to be able to see tonight is that everything is energy. And that when we truly know how to transform energy, how to transform, then everything is always in the process of moving to a higher form. And what if you didn't have to feel, I'm going to use this word, and I don't know if it's a very spiritual, what if you didn't have to feel freaked out again? Like, what if you didn't have to get all wound up about what shows up in your life because you know that there's a power in you that's greater than that? And it actually expects you to take dominion over your life. You're expected to take dominion over it. Because life knows that your soul is bigger than anything else in the universe. And when you act confused or limited or victimized by an event, life gets concerned. Like, what's wrong with this picture? We have this spiritual master who's forgotten that he or she is a spiritual master, and acting like this little thing has dominion or control over them instead of the other way around. And the reality is we've all done it. I mean, can you think of a time when an event happened in your life and you totally felt victimized by the event? Something rolled into your life and you totally felt like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. I'm profoundly messed up now. Right? I'm trying to say it in a way that I don't swear. So, because my vocabulary is always clean and perfect all the time, right? I, of all people, cannot afford to lie, boy. It's just, the next step, it's gone, right? It's just absolutely gone. So what we're going to do tonight, right, is look at the spiritual process that allows us to take dominion and mastery over everything. Because some of us have been a victim for so long, we lead with our victimhood. Even though we have 52 cards in the deck, we just think that playing the victim card will get us more. Like if we're sad enough, pathetic enough, wounded enough, that we're going to get a better result. How many of you can recognize there was a time in your life, and maybe it was last week, where you really used the victim card to be pathetic enough so that somebody would save you? Right? And you can do that. You absolutely have free will. You can do that. But what I want us to focus on tonight is what if you stepped into spiritual mastery? What if you actually took dominion over your life? What if you started calling everything in your life into a higher expression, a higher form, a higher possibility? And what if you got to be that big and that bold and to actually take dominion over everything? Would you just entertain that idea for a second for me? I take dominion over everything in my life, right? This is a big step. Would you be willing to go that big? I take dominion over everything in my life. You can't say it like this. I take dominion over everything in my life, right? If you're gonna play this big and this bold, you actually have to say it like that. Together, I take dominion over everything in my life. One more time, like we mean it together, even a little bit bigger, not louder, but I want it more from your soul. Ready? I take dominion over everything in my life. I take dominion over everything in my life. Okay, great. All right, so we began this process of miracles, and the first 4 elements of a miracle I need to touch on, because if we don't get those first 4, if they don't make sense, then the 5th one, this one, it's a little harder to do. So the first element of a miracle is that you're 100% willing. And I want you to really check in with your soul as I'm going through all these 4. Are you really willing to have miracles in your life? Are you willing to live the most amazing life? Are you willing to really be the master of your life? So the first step is always, are you willing? Because that's the thing that God asks us over and over, that life asks us over and over again, is are you willing? Because you have free will. The universe can't help you if you are not willing to exercise free will. So the question is, are you willing? The next one is our ability to process energy or expand the energy in our life is directly correlated to how much we love. And so the second step in the miracle is the miracle of love. So are you willing to open your heart in a way that's more profound and bigger than you usually love? Because all love comes from God, right? And every time we start contracting our heart, we're contracting the good in our life. So are you willing to love in a bigger way? And then we talked about in the third step, we talked about asking and declarations and the importance that you actually begin to decide to ask and declare the life that you want, to actually speak it into existence. And then 2 weeks ago, the 4th one was believing. And believing is the thing that allows us to expand the size of our soul. That every time we believe, we expand. Every time we move into doubt, we contract. And the soul only knows 2 things. It only knows expansion and contraction. So the more that we believe, the more we're expanding. The more we move into self-doubt, the more we contract. And then today we move into the idea of the miracle of transformation. And I've been sharing with you one of Jesus' miracles each week as we go through it. Today I want to share the miracle when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And this is in John 11. So let me just read. I'm going to read 2 sections. I'm going to read the opening story that sets the context for the miracle. And then I'm going to go down to verse 38 and just read the miracle itself. But in verse 1. Now a man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, in the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And Mary was the one who anointed Jesus' head with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. And her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sister sent a message to Jesus, said, Lord, with whom you love is ill. And Jesus heard it, said, his illness does not lead to death, but rather it is for the glory of God, so that the glory of God may be glorified through it. And accordingly, Jesus loved Martha and Mary and Lazarus. And after hearing that Lazarus was ill, he stayed for 2 days longer in the place where he was. So, if you hear that I'm ill, and you stay 2 days longer, we are going to have to talk. right? Because how many of you, like if you found out that a loved one or a family member or a good friend was ill and you thought, I'm just going to stay in Hawaii 2 more days and we'll just see how it rolls and then maybe I'll come home. So there was a part of Jesus that was trying to make a point, right? And so then go down to verse 38. By this point, Lazarus has already died. And Jesus again was greatly disturbed, and he came to the tomb. And it was a cave, and the stone was laying against it. And Jesus said, roll away the stone. And Martha, the sister, said, Lord, there's already a stench because he's been dead for 4 days. And Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believe that you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked up to heaven and said, Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you hearest me always. But I've said this for the sake of the crowd that are standing here, so that they may believe that you have sent me. And when he said this, he cried aloud, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out. His hands and feet were still bound in the strips of cloth, and his face was still wrapped in cloth. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. So what is the spiritual process that Jesus used that allowed him to transform that situation? Because being dead, right, in our culture, in every culture, being dead is the fundamental thing that you can't do anything about. True? We think that's the end, right? It's dead, right? And this thing, Jesus demonstrated the transformative process of spirit. So I want to break it down. I'm going to break it down into 4 steps tonight, okay? First one. The first aspect of transformation is you have to be willing to see it the way it is, right? So one of the things that happens when we're living life is that when something goes down the way we don't want it to go down, we get in resistance to the way it is, right? If we're driving along and our car breaks down, for many of us, our first thought is, it shouldn't be this way, right? Have you ever noticed how much suffering comes from that idea that it shouldn't be this way? That all suffering, really literally all suffering comes from it shouldn't be this way. And the moment our mind clicks into it shouldn't be this way, it's impossible not to feel like a victim. The moment we think the thought it shouldn't be this way, we move into instant agreement with ourselves. I'm right. It shouldn't be this way, right? And as soon as we think the thought it shouldn't be this way, and then we move into our own agreement that we're right, it shouldn't be this way, it's impossible not to feel like a victim. Right? But then what happens is, what instantly happens then is it's now you and the thing. And you are now separate from the thing. Right? What's interesting as a spiritual process is when you don't move into resistance with it, you actually remain a part of it. Right? You actually made a connection to it. Right? So what if whenever something happens in your life, instead of resisting it, you fully accept it? You fully accept it the way it is, right? Now, does that mean you need to like it? No, you don't need to like it, but you need to see it exactly the way it is, because it's not unless you can see it the way it actually is that you can transform it, because you can't transform something you can't see. And if you move into resistance, you're actually not seeing it the way it is. All you're seeing is through your eyes of your own resistance. So the number one thing, the first thing that we have to do over and over again when something shows up in our life that's not exactly the way we want it, is we have to see it the way it is. Oh, I just broke my arm, right? I just broke my arm. Now, I could have broken my arm a couple weeks ago, right? And I might be in resistance that I broke my arm again, right? But if I don't accept it the way it is, I'm now in my drama, I'm now in my story, I'm not in my place of power that allows me to transform it. So what in your life have you been in resistance to that actually prevents you from transforming it? That you have to be willing to see it the way it is. Oh, my car just broke down. Now, can you have a feeling about that? Sure. As long as you're not in resistance to the fact or move to the mental spot that says it shouldn't happen this way, right? That shouldn't have happened. Because the moment we do this, we actually move ourselves out of it, okay? So the first thing is you have to be willing, because when you accept something the way it is, does your soul get bigger or smaller? Bigger. Like when you accept something in your life, when you actually accept something the way it is, your soul actually expands to embrace it. The moment you say it shouldn't be this way, your soul actually contracts and gets smaller, so there's not room for that thing within you, right? So the moment you accept anything, right? You don't have to like it, but you have to accept it. You have to see it the way it is. Oh, my arm's broken, or I don't have enough money in my checkbook to pay rent this month, or that loser just walked out, right? Whatever it is, right? You have to fully accept it exactly the way it is, because it's only when you accept it that your soul actually becomes big enough to embrace it. So the first thing is you have to see it the way it is. The next thing is, and this gets a little bit more difficult, is you have to see God right there. See, if you don't see God right there, if you see it as a problem, you're not seeing the spiritual energy. Right? Because is everything energy? Is this chair energy? Yes? Right. Is Brian energy? Yes. No, he is. He's not low energy. You know, everything is spiritual energy. Everything is spiritual energy. And one of the points that I've made before is there just as much energy in a 1973 Pinto as there is in a 2016 Ferrari? I would say yes. Like some people want, but if we don't see that there's exactly the same amount of energy, the only difference is what? Is our perception. Like we see one as more valuable than the other. But when it comes to spiritual energy, both have the same amount of spiritual energy. So when something comes into your life, the job is not to resist it. And if you want to go even further, it's to not judge it. So you don't resist and you don't judge. But you begin to see God right there. That this thing that just came into your life, whatever form it is actually has all the spiritual energy that you need to have exactly what you want. Because it rolled in as spiritual energy. It's in a form that you don't like, but it's at its basis is just spiritual energy. It's like saying, like it's a battery. It rolls in, and you can do anything you want with it. But the moment you resist it, the more you resist it and hate it, the more your soul contracts, and the more you can't transform it. But if you can just see it and see God right there, now it's flexible. The moment you can see God right there, it can be anything. Okay? 3, when you can accept it without judgment, even with love, and you can see that it's spiritual energy, now it waits for you to call it into something else. Now it gets interesting. If I don't want a broken refrigerator, if I fully accept that my refrigerator is broken, I acknowledge that my refrigerator is broken. But I see that refrigerator has almost infinite spiritual energy. So if I don't resist that it's a broken refrigerator, and I see God right there as an infinitely possible experience, what situation would I rather have? And what would happen if I called it into something I'd rather have? Well, I'd rather take the energy in that broken refrigerator and transform it into 1,000 different things. I can think of 1,000 things I'd rather have than a broken refrigerator. Can everybody think of at least 1,000 things that you'd rather have than a broken refrigerator? Now, you can spend weeks complaining about that stupid refrigerator. Or you can say, well, what I'd rather have is a refrigerator that works, or a fully alive physical body, or a great relationship, or I'd rather have a whole new house. Right? What I want you to see is that there's enough spiritual energy in a broken refrigerator to become anything. How many of you have ever seen one of the old documentaries on an atomic bomb? Anybody seen it? Right? So the whole premise of an atomic bomb is that there's enough energy in an atom to release a chain reaction that can be incredibly destructive. But it happens, right, within an atom. It happens within the smallest thing that we can't even see with our naked eye. That there is so much energy in an atom that we have the power to create anything. So can you imagine if you released all the spiritual energy in your broken refrigerator, it could be anything. But we see it as worthless. And if you see it as worthless, how much energy do you claim out of it? None. You never transform it into something else. That everything is energy. So what would you rather have, a broken refrigerator or your heart's desire? Heart's desire. Okay? First thing, right? I want you to accept it. Second thing is I want you to see God right there. The third thing is I want you to call it in to what's your heart's desire. I want you to call that energy, that form that it is now that you're not really enjoying, into a form that you would absolutely, totally, completely enjoy. And you ready for 4? 4, I want you to give thanks for your ability to transform energy. Thank you, God, that you've given me the power to transform any situation into a higher expression. Anything. So whatever's going on, so you ready for your homework? You ready? So I want you to take one thing in your life that you are not completely enjoying. Does everybody have at least one? I mean, it can be as simple as a pair of shoes that you bought that don't fit, or it could be your bathroom that needs to be remodeled, or it could be your relationship with one of your kids or your grandkids or your spouse. You get to pick anything that you want, right? And I want you to go through these 4 steps. And I want you to go through them over and over again until you just nail it. The first thing is, I forgive myself for any way that I've been in resistance to this situation. And I release any resistance that I have to the fact that my refrigerator just broke. I release any resistance to that. I release any resistance to any way that I've been at odds with my own life. 2, I see God right there. I see you, God. I see all the spiritual energy in this situation, and I see it as infinite abundance right here, right now, waiting to be called forth in amazing ways in my life. And I speak. I am not afraid of speaking. I'm willing to call forth the highest expression of my life that I've ever called before. I claim all the spiritual energy in that refrigerator, and I call it forth into a job that's fantastic, or I call it into a remodeled kitchen, or I call forth the greatest home I've ever had. I call forth the next highest, greatest version of my life. And I give thanks. I give thanks even before I see it actually transform. Jesus looked up to heaven because he knew that God was listening, that God was always listening. And he said it so that everyone could see the process that he used to transform from dead to life. That there are, I guarantee, areas in your life that look dead to you. Maybe something in your home that doesn't work, or areas in relationships that feel dead, or maybe your career feels dead. I guarantee that you have at least one area in your life that looks dead to you. I want you to call it forth. To no longer be in resistance to it, but to accept it. Maybe even give thanks before it. That as you give thanks, as your soul expands to receive it exactly the way it is, that you can call it forth into a higher form. And I guarantee that it's going to change the way you look at life. It's going to change the way you do life. Because some of us are living so timid, we're afraid about what's going to happen next. Have you ever heard the expression, I'm worried about when the next shoe's going to, is it shoe going to fall? Right? Drop? Well, you know the point, right?
So we live in this level of a low-level fear, worried about what's going to happen next. I want you to take your life back. I want you to take dominion. That when the shoe drops, you say, great, I'm going to transform it into 10 new pairs of shoes. Or 50 new pairs of shoes, or how many ever new pairs of shoes you think is enough. Right? Because we live in spiritual energy. Spiritual energy takes on form. But it's not the only form. It's just the current form. And if you don't like this form, change it. All right. Does everybody have at least one thing you're willing to do your homework on this week? At least one thing that you've decided is enough is enough. I'm tired of being in resistance to this. I'm tired of being afraid of this. I'm started feeling like a victim to this situation, and I am ready to transform it. So what I want you to do this week is I want you to get after it. I want you to just see God right there, call it into a higher form, and give thanks for it, and watch things transform in your life. Take a breath. Let's pray. I want you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. I want you to step into your next level of spiritual mastery tonight. I want you to feel strong and brave in God. That you're not here just blowing around by the wind anymore. That you're actually taking dominion and mastery over everything in your life. And that you're calling everything in your life higher. That whatever there has been lack or limitation or fear, that we are calling forth everything in our life to move to the next highest level. That there is no limit to your power to give form and shape to substance. There's no limit. And I want you to decide tonight that you're willing to take mastery over life. That you're no longer willing to be afraid or weak or in doubt. You are willing to stand up and claim your spiritual power and be the man or woman that God has created you to be. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, it is done. Amen. God bless you all. Thanks for being here this week.